second full year under new ownership to really be where they are right now for this Commanders franchise is one of the best stories of this NFL season.
Went to the playoffs and won 2 road games. Now we're going to use that. Hey, rookie quarterback on? No more rookie quarterback. He's already arrived in the NFL as a legitimate quarterback. And can you say, Ben, is he already top 5?
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
He did nothing for 5 weeks. So he's becoming his brother. So I don't want to hear about how great T.J. Watt is with his 0 playoff wins. And he's the first guy to admit it. He comes right out and says, I've never won a playoff game. I don't matter. All right, at least we all know who the best player on the team is. It's George Pickens. If you don't believe that, well, then screw you, too.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Real momentum on Deion Sanders becoming the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
I heard that this morning.
And Dallas is interested in the idea. Deion is interested in the idea, and there is equal interest in moving up to get Shedeur Sanders to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys under Deion.
Be a hell of a reality show.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We all know MVPs don't win the Super Bowl. It's not about MVPs, man. The only MVP, fine. Win the MVP of the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about the MVP of the regular season besides people that bet on it, the actual player themselves, and their agent that's getting a cut of the bonus money. Other than that, who cares? What do you care who wins the MVP? Like I said, unless you bet on it. Right? If you bet on it, fine. Then I guess you care.
Sports Rage tonight. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on this Thursday on the Early Line on SportsGrid. We are 2 days away from Conference Championship weekend, exactly 3 from Conference Championship Sunday around the National Football League. 2 matchups to detail for you over these next 2 hours. Of course, it starts with the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia, the Eagles hosting divisional foe in the Washington Commanders. And then it ends on Sunday evening in a familiar spot for AFC Championship games the last 6 or 7 years inside Arrowhead Stadium between 2 very familiar playoff foes. That would be the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. We will start to break down what we will have on Conference Championship Sunday. Mark Zinno will join the show in just a little bit to look back on the end of a college football season in the first ever 12-team college football playoff. In DRS, we start by looking at practice reports from the opening full day of practice for all 4 teams still in the hunt for a Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah, and it's very important that you start the week off by saying who's going to be rested, who's going to be ready, and understand this. These players are going to give every single effort they can, because when we talk about like emptying the clip at the end of the season, this is the time to do it. You can't rest and be, hey, man, catch you for the Super Bowl. Hopefully win this weekend. Those guys are going to press, and particularly with quarterbacks, like we'll talk about in Jalen Hurts. You think if his knee is banged up, but he says, you know what, I can stand up in that pocket. I want to be sat down because it's best for the team to have Kenny Pickett in there. No way. Players play. No. Players want to be aggressive. Players want to be competitive and be out there with their guys. I expect the majority of the players that we see on the practice report to be playing in that game Sunday. Why? Because you wait your entire life, some of these guys, Ben, just to make it to a Super Bowl.
I mean, DRS, unless there was a true sideline injury throughout last game or throughout the opening few weeks of the postseason where the guy is going to miss a significant amount of time, not play again this season, I think everybody listed on the injury reports really should be out there, of course, even if not fully at 100%. DRS, your birthday is coming up in February, right?
No, it's not, but I hope it was. February 9th, maybe? Yeah.
September? Oh, February 9th could be a day. But just to make sure that I remember September, so I know what I'm going to get you for your next birthday. The Eagles are selling the real snow from their playoff win. The snow will be shipped using dry ice to maintain its natural state during transit. And then, of course, if you get it, you got to put it in the freezer. Being sold, as reports state, for about $50 for the 50 combined points scored between the Eagles and the Rams on Sunday in that divisional round matchup in the link. Shouldn't it just be 28 for the amount of points the Eagles scored, not incorporating what their defense allowed? That would seem to be a better gift, but I think we can get a couple of people together to get DRS something I know that he would love to have in that freezer. I think there used to be a fridge behind you. We could probably put it in there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a stupid idea. And by the way, paying for it, who's going to pay for that? And by the way, it was a playoff win. It wasn't even like a monumental NFC championship or a Super Bowl that you're actually doing this for. Just a random playoff game to do that. Ridiculous as is. And like being a season ticket holder when I was from 03 to 17, we used to get some pretty nice prizes that they would give you at the end of the season. Like, hey, you know what? Here's a really nice paperweight. Here's a really nice picture or sign something or memorabilia. Wouldn't that have been a nice thing to get to the fans? Like, hey, looking for a memento. You know what? Send that to, that's kind of interesting because it's not something that you keep out at this point. You put it in your freezer. So what does it get? Buried in the back of the freezer where you never get to see it?
Yeah.
And the fact you're getting charged $50 where they're probably even taking it from like the plows out front of the stadium. Like, man, they'll never know. What are they going to test this? To be like, you know what? We got this snow from the 22-yard line here. We got this snow from the back of the south end zone. Stop it. What a stupid idea.
What if you open the lid of your snow and there's like a little bit of yellow? Are you like freaked out? Are you just holding?
No, you know what would have been a good idea? Like a better idea, Ben? Have this at the game this Sunday. So when things don't go well, you open it up, you create a snowball, and you blast it down on the field, hitting players and referees and none the like. Or even throw it into the owner's booth if things aren't going well. That would have been a novel concept. Hey, you know what? Come on in. Instead of getting the rally towel, we're going to give you a snowball in case things aren't going too well. You could throw it at people.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been a lot more fun. Maybe you can purchase and get it express shipped to your house, keep it in the freezer until Sunday, and then you're out there. But the condition's not supposed to be bitterly cold.
Pack it in, throw it. We know how to do that in Philadelphia. Yeah, put the battery in the snowball, then throw it. It's way more effective, Ben. How about that? There's a sneak.
We're not trying to severely injure people. We're about to talk about the injury report.
Snowball and throw it on the field. Works better. Goes farther, too.
Oh, my devious individual, Donnie Rightside. Speaking of injuries, we hope none of them are as significant for the Eagles. The four teams competing on Conference Championship Sunday in the injury reports published yesterday from the first full day of practice. When I say full day of practice, I just mean back on the turf, not necessarily pads popping an Oklahoma drill like this is the middle of August. But Jalen Hurts, of course, with the knee injury, limited yesterday, as was Quinyon Mitchell. A.J. Brown, knee rest. Lane Johnson, knee rest. Did not practice. Tight end Dallas Goedert, an outstanding young center in Cam Jurgens. DRS, are you reading between the tea leaves first and foremost for your Birds?
Yeah, and I think they're going to be okay and they're going to play. But the question is, look, you can always re-injure. Quinyon Mitchell's got a shoulder. You take another shoulder shot, that could hurt. Jalen Hurts gets sacked and falls the wrong way on that knee. It can certainly happen. But when you're looking at, like, the bigness of the game, like Hugh Douglas always get a kick out of here, former defensive end for the Philadelphia Eagles. He always used to say, when you're playing big games in the NFL and you need help, you go see Dr. Bombay and he gets you right and you play that football game because it's the end of the season. Maybe you don't do that in weeks 3 or weeks 4. How about this, Ben? You ever see the movie Varsity Blues, getting ready for a big game? Lance Harbor? Come on, man. Stick that needle right into the knee. Get out there and let's perform and let's win a football game. Hey, man, it's what happens. Whether it's movies or real life, man, you got to play. You got to do things that you got to get yourself out there. And sometimes, hey, man, you got to take a little bit extra.
Dr. Donnie, you're really kind of implicating yourself in perhaps your medical practices here on this Thursday on the early line. For the Commanders, by the way, Olamide Zaccheaus limited at practice, DNP, a couple of significant figures for Washington. The former Eagle in Zach Ertz and the linebacker Bobby Wagner and Deron Payne, two consistent defensive players for Washington. But, Donnie, you said before, as we were breaking down the injury reports, unless it is a season-ending injury where you are not going to play again this year, in Conference Championship Sunday or Super Bowl Sunday, we would still expect you to be out there, at least in some capacity, come this weekend.
Yes, correct. And if you're looking at those two teams here, Bobby Wagner's been battling that ankle injury, played last week. Of course, you're going to give him as much time off as you need as a veteran guy to get himself right for Sunday. And the Eagles will do the same thing. Do you think Quinyon Mitchell is doing Oklahoma tackling drills this week in practice to see if his shoulder's okay? No, they're going to rest it and hope he feels good. Same thing with Dallas Goedert, worried about an ankle injury. It's all in the mix. Understand this. When you enter into the regular season week number 1, you know there's going to be attrition through injuries. Just the fact that these guys are banged up and healthy enough to play after 18 weeks and a playoff run, it's amazing that these guys are still getting out of bed on Monday and Tuesday, lucky enough to walk around and trying to get themselves ready for Sunday. So credit these guys. When we talk about modern-day gladiators at the end of a season, these football players are exactly that.
On the AFC side of things, the Chiefs actually pretty healthy. We did see Taylor Rapp, of course, for Buffalo, the safety who made the pick in the opening half of Lamar Jackson, exit the game with what appeared to be a significant hip injury. I would not be surprised, of course, if he does not play on Sunday in KC. We're going to talk some basketball next.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. We'll get back to the football in just a little bit, but now time to go around the association from a Wednesday night slate that featured 8 games. Should have been 9, but the historic snowfall we have seen in the South this week postponed a game in New Orleans between the Pels and the Bucks. Probably good for the Pelicans. It's been a disastrous season. So elsewhere around the NBA, Big matchup last night in H-Town between the Rockets and the Cavaliers. Cleveland entered yesterday, best overall record in the NBA. Still, Houston, second best mark in the Western Conference. Keep an eye on Ime Udoka and the Rockets in year number 2. Donnie, 2-point spread for most of the day in favor of the Cavaliers. Closer to a pick'em, and the Rockets needed it, holding on to win by 1 at home, 109-108, in a potential finals preview. All allow it. Story of the game. A couple of made free throws at the end from the Rockets, who had a double-digit lead entering the fourth quarter. Cleveland's Darius Garland goes down the floor, has a chance to take the lead. A flagrant foul on a three-point attempt. So he has 3 free throws, and the Cavs get the ball back. Darius Garland misses the first 2 of 3 free throws, and the Rockets hold on to win. Again, 109-108 in a big victory for Houston at home.
Yeah, and you take a look at that fourth quarter, only 15 points scored by the home team, Houston Rockets, and still able to pull away with that victory. 29-14 now in the season. If you take a look at these statistics here and you say, well, where do things go wrong for it? Not necessarily, only 31% from three-point range for the road team here in the Cavaliers, but if you shoot 44% like the Houston Rockets did from three-point range, that's going to help. Buoyed by Fred VanVleet, 7 of 12 from three-point range en route to 26 points. This is a team that I don't know how much we can trust them because we're not used to the Houston Rockets being, hey, maybe they make the playoffs to hold on now. Could they actually vie for a top seed, which we don't think they'll get, but let's just say a 2, 3, or a 4 seed. This is a great win for a young basketball team that's finding different ways to win against arguably the best team in the NBA. You'll take wins anytime that you can get them, which includes you didn't play very well in the fourth quarter and you still end up winning that game. That's a solid victory for the Rockets.
Yeah, a really big win for Houston, DRS. And as you look at that closing number, again, depending on where you got it throughout the day, the Rockets still really closing as an underdog. So now 7-4-1 ATS this year as a dog with 6 outright victories. The Cavs fall to 36-7. Donnie mentioned the Rockets at 29-14 straight up. Again, notice 43 games for both teams in the regular season, past what would be considered that midway point of an 82-game regular season. So 36-7 straight up for Cleveland, now tied atop the association for that best record alongside who? The Oklahoma City Thunder. Career night for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 54 points against the Utah Jazz. Now, the Jazz do cover as a 15-point road dog in OKC, 123-114 the final. But a career night for SGA. He is now minus 600 DRS to win the NBA MVP award. And the Thunder tied atop with the Cavaliers at 36-7 straight up, that regular season mark, best in the NBA.
That's pretty impressive, 54. And I thought I saw one of those where it was like, hey, he scored, 32 points or 30-some-odd points in one quarter. I think, yeah, that's exactly what he does. Anything you're talking about, 30-some-odd points is where he can usually get to. But 54 is incredible, included 17 of 18 from the free throw line. They're like those Joel Embiid statistics. When he has a big night, he gets to the free throw line, which you saw. 17 of 35 from the floor. Man, it's hard to, even just shooting 35 times is a tough night in the NBA just to get that open that many times, which shows you how talented he is. Jalen Williams chips in with 25 points. I like this team. They are a lot of fun. And also, for the OKC fans that struggle through their own process where the team was actively telling you, we're not trying to win. We're just going to try to stack good players up, get draft picks, open up some cap space. It paid off in spades, as they said, at 36-7, with still a bright future ahead of them, which that future just might be now, which is nuts.
The Thunder, by the way, a 7-game cushion for that top seed in the Western Conference. The challengers, the Rockets and the Grizzlies at this moment. OKC nearing minus money to win the Western Conference, a plus 110, a very short favorite. Second best price is the Nuggets at 5-1. Boston already an odds-on minus money favorite to win the Eastern Conference crown as the reigning NBA champs at minus 110. Double-digit favorite last night, even on the road in Los Angeles against the Clippers, as the Celtics have often been this year, but not a comfortable win for the C's. A victory, though, nonetheless. In overtime, 117-113. Boston beats L.A. The Clippers do cover as a 12-point home underdog.
Yeah, taking a look at the Clippers lineup there, and there's a couple key pieces missing that in effect, kept that game close, which is kind of wild the way it was. Also, keep in mind, yes, it was a good victory. It's a road victory for the Celtics. They're on a back-to-back tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers in the same arena, or not in the same arena, in the same city, but at the same time, the Lakers will be rested tonight. You'll take those victories anytime you can get them.
In front of the wall now at the Intuit Dome, and of course going over to crypto to take on the Lakers. The Celtics, unsurprisingly, DRS, a favorite in 42 of 44 games now this year. 17-24-1 against the spread, so they haven't been covering a ton despite being 31-13 straight up, along with Cleveland and OKC. Boston, one of 3 teams in the NBA with at least 30 wins this year. And here is one of the reasons, perhaps, their cover percentage, ATS, as a favorite this year is not all that stellar. Last night was their 29th game of 42 booked as a double-digit favorite. How about the Sacramento Kings? In the interim, head coach Doug Christie make it 10 of 12 in the win column for Christie as the interim head coach. Sacramento, though, has only covered in 6 of those 10 victories, but a victory last night by 6, like that beam in Sacktown in the Northern California rivalry against the Golden State Warriors. 123-117, the win for the Kings.
Tough one, because it looked like it was going to be a blowout victory for the Warriors in the first half, and then here come the Sacramento Kings in the second half with 37 points scored in the third and 38 points scored in the fourth quarter. And by the way, you were looking at some spread drama, a lot of outlets showing 6.5 at game time last night, 23-117, a meaningless layup with under 10 seconds to go by the Warriors, cashing that ticket.
Yep, a lot of spread drama. We'll continue to talk about it in college hoops next.
Saturday, January 25th is a huge day at Gulfstream Park. It is Pegasus Cup Day. We're going to have a preview show. First Bet presents the DRF handicapping show for Pegasus World Cup. Alexa, tell us more.
Yep, Friday, January 24th. Make sure to tune in on SportsGrid TV from 2 to 3 p.m. to see the show. If you miss it then, don't worry. It airs again on Saturday at 11 a.m. We're going to talk about all the major contenders in the Pegasus Cup.
Special guests Bailey Armour, Samantha Perry, and Randy Moss will join us. Don't miss it.
He did nothing for 5 weeks. So he's becoming his brother. So I don't want to hear about how great TJ Watt is with his 0 playoff wins. And he's the first guy to admit it. He comes right out and says, I've never won a playoff game. I don't matter. All right, at least we all know who the best player on the team is. It's George Pickens. If you don't believe that, well, then screw you too.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Real momentum on Deion Sanders becoming the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
I heard that this morning.
And Dallas is interested in the idea. Deion is interested in the idea, and there is equal interest in moving up to get Shedeur Sanders to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys under Deion.
Be a hell of a reality show.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We all know MVPs don't win the Super Bowl. It's not about MVPs, man. The only MVP, fine. Win the MVP of the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about the MVP of the regular season besides people that bet on it, the actual player themselves, and their agent that's getting a cut of the bonus money. Other than that, who cares? What do you care who wins the MVP? Like I said, unless you bet on it. Right? If you bet on it, fine. Then I guess you care.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Let's talk some college basketball now from a wonderful Wednesday night slate around the country. So good, DRS is even starting to dive in. Donnie, yesterday in the Southeastern Conference, which is always going to have marquee matchups night in, night out, the remainder of this college basketball campaign, we saw a lot of teams that ended up with a win, not really have a lead until the closing seconds of regulation, including A&M, who did not lead throughout the entirety of the game in Oxford. Down by 8 with under 4 minutes remaining and coming all the way back to beat Ole Miss on the road outright as a 2.5-point dog. Manny Obaseki, a clutch three-pointer in the closing seconds to give the Aggies the win over Ole Miss in the Runnin' Rebs last night. Again, outright as a 2.5-point dog, 63-62.
Didn't shoot all that well from three-point range, under 30%. That usually hampers you. You only shot 9 free throws as the road team here. That usually hampers you. You turn the basketball over 20 times to 13 times. You're not supposed to come away with victories. But you know how you make up for that, Ben? Put them on the glass, baby. 48 rebounds to 31. You have that many extra chance opportunities. That really comes to fruition. But that is nuts, man. 63-62, a defensive rock fight down there in the SEC.
It seemed like the Aggies had zero chance. Manny Obaseki, a huge shot for Texas A&M. Palpable. Buzz Williams, best rebounding team in the country, now going on a second consecutive year. You heard the stats that DRS laid out. Florida trailing for most of the game against South Carolina, who had a lead at the break, despite the fact the Gators, a top 5 team, even albeit on the road in Columbia, booked as an 11.5-point favorite against the Gamecocks team that was great last year under Lamont Paris in his first year in Columbia as the head coach. This year just 10-9 and have now lost 6 straight, but they did cover last night as an 11.5-point dog. Will Richard at the end for Florida. The big difference, a layup with about 10 ticks remaining in regulation. The Gators escape with a 1-point win.
And 0-6 in the conference. Some people might be calling him Paris Lamont now at this point. The season is going so poorly for the South Carolina Gamecocks. 10-9 on the season, 0-6. No, last year when we had on a guest, you called him Paris Lamont, which was great. And see, I remember stuff like that.
Dude.
Yep, there you go. Yep.
That's good.
I follow along. I follow along with all the good stuff.
You're right. Listen, a Bo Ryan disciple, so I was really just trying to pay him homage, and I messed it up last year. But yes,
sounds better, Paris.
Yeah, sounds like a nice place. We'll talk about Paris and NBA games a little bit later on. 0-6 for the Gamecocks in SEC play. The Razorbacks in the first year under John Calipari seem destined for that as well. In a tight game against Georgia, all throughout at Bud Walton, Arkansas picks up its first win in SEC play this season. And, Donnie, I'm not sure if you caught the end of the game. The Hogs at the line in a tied game, 65-all, with about 3 seconds remaining in regulation. Arkansas closing as a 1.5 favorite. They make the first free throw. The guy misses the second, gets his own board. No need to put up a shot. Just dribble it out. And as time expires, he goes up for the putback. And it is true. The Razorbacks win 68-65 and even get a cover in their first win in SEC play this year.
Yeah, that's a tough scene there to get beat like that. But also, did I see news? Boogie Fland out for the year now for Arkansas. So things going to get a little bit tougher down there at Bud Walton to try to manage through that SEC for John Calipari.
Yeah, it's pretty tough for Coach Cal right now. Not tough for Houston last night, holding Utah to only 36 points. 34-point win for the Cougs. They are finding their form. They cover as a 16.5-point favorite. Kansas big win on the road in Fort Worth as a 7.5-point favorite against TCU. And how about some overtime action inside Madison Square Garden between St. John's and Xavier? The Red Storm prevail as a 7.5-point favorite in the extra session, winning by 8 against the Musketeers.
Kevin's favorite team as a kid, St. John's University with Rick Pitino at that point. By the way, 8-1 in the Big East for the Johnnies, bringing back basketball in style in the city.
No doubt about it, man. New York City basketball, Queens basketball. The Red Storm, 17-3. Best start to a season in the opening 20 games since the mid-'80s when Mark Jackson was running the show up there in Kevin's neck.
They even had a different name back then, Ben. Did you know that? How about that?
Silence this guy. Get him ready. second full year under new ownership to really be where they are right now for this Commanders franchise is one of the best stories of this NFL season.
Went to the playoffs and won 2 road games. Now we're going to use that. Hey, rookie quarterback one? No more rookie quarterback. He's already arrived in the NFL as a legitimate quarterback. And can you say, Ben, is he already top 5?
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
He did nothing for 5 weeks. So he is becoming his brother. So I don't want to hear about how great TJ Watt is with his 0 playoff wins. And he's the first guy to admit it. He comes right out and says, I've never won a playoff game. I don't matter. All right, at least we all know who the best player on the team is. It's George Pickens. If you don't believe that, well, then screw you, too.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Real momentum on Deion Sanders becoming the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
I heard that this morning.
And Dallas is interested in the idea. Deion is interested in the idea, and there is equal interest in moving up to get Shedeur Sanders to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys under Deion.
Be a hell of a reality show.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We all know MVPs don't win the Super Bowl. It's not about MVPs, man. The only MVP, fine. Win the MVP of the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about the MVP of the regular season besides people that bet on it, the actual player themselves, and their agent that's getting a cut of the bonus money. Other than that, who cares? What do you care who wins the MVP? Like I said, unless you bet on it. Right? If you bet on it, fine. Then I guess you care.
Sports Rage tonight. Only on SportsGrid.
A man who on a Monday night was at a national championship game in Atlanta to take in all of the action in the first ever title game in the 12-team college football playoff. That would be Mark Zinno joining us live right here on this Thursday on the Early Line on SportsGrid to react to what he saw on Monday night in the ATL and, of course, the first ever 12-team CFP. Zinno, as always, thank you for being here for one final time talking college football this season on the Early Line.
Great to be with you guys. It always was a wonderfully entertaining national championship game. And, of course, we got the rare instance where the best team in the country actually ended up coming out on top. So that all worked out.
And, Zinno, you say entertaining. In the opening half, really midway through the third quarter, it did not feel as such. It seemed like Ohio State was going to steamroll Notre Dame. The Irish defense could not get a stop. Ohio State doing anything and everything it wanted offensively. But then it got fun. And then it got exciting. And then it was a single-score game with only 3 minutes remaining in regulation before Will Howard connected with Jeremiah Smith for 57 yards in the ceiling offensive play for the Buckeyes. For the first time since 2014 in the first ever college football playoff, Ohio State reaches the pinnacle as a national champion once again in the first ever 12-team college football playoff. 34-23. The Buckeyes cover as an 8.5-point favorite in Atlanta. A total of 45 and a hook does sky over. Zinno, as you were seeing that exciting fourth quarter play out in Atlanta, and you see the red and white confetti fall on the field inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium, what impressed you most about the Buckeyes ending the year as a national champ?
Well, look, nobody in the country was going to make that 14 run that they made, right? There's not another team in the country that would have beaten in succession Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame, right? Like you could take any of those 4 teams that they beat and give them the gauntlet with Ohio State, and they don't run the table. So Ohio State was clearly the best team in the country, and that 4-game run may have been one of the more impressive 4-game runs we've seen in the better part of the last 20 years when it comes to crowning a national champion. So give Ohio State all the credit. I will take some umbrage with Ohio State. And I was in the Ohio State section with all the season ticket holders. And at one point, one of them remarked to me this is why we hate Ryan Day. And it was somewhere towards the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter where they just went so freaking conservative and they just basically thought, well, the game's over. Because you know what Mark Zinno did at halftime? As soon as he got there, got right on his phone. What's the halftime number? Ohio State minus 5.5. They are going to boat race this team in the second half. The floodgates are going to open. They're going to score 50 on this team, and they absolutely should have. They scored 10 points right to start the second half. It's 31-7, and they took their foot off the gas pedal. And they let up, and they went super conservative. Oh, we're just going to run now. Oh, we're just going to run now. They let Notre Dame right back in that game. That game should have been 50-10, and it should have been a laugher. And as the Ohio State fans said to me, and I was equally frustrated, this is sometimes why we hate Ryan Day, because this stuff happens.
Ryan Day, with the interesting part about this playoff, which I think you started off correct, Mark, saying, you know what? We don't feel cheated from our national champion this year. And it feels great to say that. Like, very rarely do we have a Super Bowl champion like, they didn't deserve it. No, they won wild card games, divisional round games, AFC, NFC championship games, and the Super Bowl here. That's what I love. And you see the numbers, like 14-2, 16 teams this Ohio State team played. But also understand this. If we were just operating 1 year previous, Ryan Day would have been fired moments after losing to Michigan. He had the chance to make the college football playoff, get redemption, and win a national championship. So I'm going to ask you two things here. Like, looking forward at the college football playoff, are we expecting tweaks? Are we expecting changes? Are we fine where we sit here? How do you feel about the way this played out and what the future playoffs entail?
Well, look, I think it's fair to ask the question. If they had just seeded 1 through 12, does Ohio State and Notre Dame, do they both end up in the title game? For Ohio State, I'd say yes. For Notre Dame, I'd say no. If Notre Dame was seeded as, I think they were 5th overall or 4th overall in the actual final rankings, right? If you went to the rankings 1 through 12, they were 5th, right? Yeah. So they would have had the same path that Penn State would have had, and I don't think that they get to the national championship game. If you look at the way it would have worked out, Ben, you're making this quizzical face. It's really not that hard to figure out. I promise you. If you look at the bracket,
if they were the 5 seed, they would have had what Texas had, who played Ohio State, but it would have been reseeded, and Ohio State wouldn't have been there either. So you really have to go through where you were. I make this quizzical face, because I don't think you could argue that Notre Dame had an easy path.
I would argue that Notre Dame, as the 5 seed, would not have beat Oregon, and Oregon would have easily beat the 8 seed, which wasn't Ohio State. So you get Notre Dame and Oregon in that quarterfinal matchup, Notre Dame's not winning that game.
Okay. Stop. I mean, I staunchly disagree. Notre Dame beat Georgia, handled Georgia, absolutely physically dominated Georgia.
Notre Dame beat that didn't have any sort of aerial attack at all. And Notre Dame's power is stopping the run.
And they were injured throughout the time in doing so. I disagree, but go ahead, make your point.
The point is that I think that the seeding needs to get addressed. They're not going to get rid of the automatic bids because the Big 12 and the ACC are a bunch of crybabies. But beyond that, you're not going to get rid of the automatic bids. But what you need to do with the auto bids is put them at the bottom if they are not ranked 1 through 12. Other than that, seed as ranked 1 through 12, and let's move on with this thing. It's the best and only tweak they can make until after next year when they reevaluate whether they're going to expand to 14 or not.
Yeah, 2026 will be that time to readdress expansion, but the TV rights deal is still going to remain mostly with ESPN. I don't know if we're going to get the call for expansion that some expect. They have had conversations already, conference commissioners, CFP leaders, about getting rid of the guaranteed opening round buys for the 4 highest-ranked conference champs, and as Zinno said, just seeding 1 through 12. Still automatic bids, right, for the 5 highest-ranked conference champs, just not that guaranteed opening round buy. I don't know if it changes entering 2025. We shall see. But, Zinno, it's not just the college football playoff that we saw in the 12-team era, but the first year in the 12-team era around college football in what it meant for the sport as a whole. How will you look back on this 2024 college football season?
I mean, look, again, as somebody who is anti-expansion to begin with, when you look at the final 6, right, that's what we were always contending over, right, the top 4 and the final 2. If you look at the final 6 teams in the rankings, all 6 of those teams were in the final 8, and 4 of those teams made it to the final 4. So, again, when you are 9 through 12, it's like you don't really have a legitimate stake to winning this thing but we do it because it's money and it's more games and more eyeballs and more advertisers and everything else. So, I mean, let's, outside of the rare outlier that's going to happen at some point in time, if we do enough iterations of a 12-team playoff, in reality, 9 through 12 have no chance to actually win the title, period. We know that going in. We're all willing to accept it as a fact. And sure, a 12 seed at some point is going to upset a 5 seed, and the whole world's going to be like, this is why we do this. This is why we play. Oh, it's Florida Gulf Coast. Oh, it's George Mason. Oh, shut up. Okay. It's completely ridiculous. They have no chance to win the thing, and we know that, and that's no lie. That said, again, you can't say it wasn't a success. Although the viewership, from what I understand, from the national championship game was not as high as many have expected. And maybe that, again, maybe that's because it's hard to figure out, because Notre Dame has a huge fan base, as does Ohio State, and a fan base that travels well. You see the Atlanta airport on Tuesday morning? It was a mess. That said, I'm not sure why the viewership wasn't what it was. Maybe they need to just look at when they play the games and do it more on a weekend, do it on a Saturday night, and be willing to contend with the NFL playoffs or something like that. I don't know. Maybe the answer is do it on the off championship weekend between the Super Bowl and the conference championship games in the NFL. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to kind of slice that.
Yeah, the scheduling, Zinno, needs to be addressed, no doubt. It's very prolonged to play a national championship game on a Monday night in late January. A lot going on Monday, as we know as well, so maybe that impacted the numbers, but I do think scheduling, timing of an expanded college football playoff should be under consideration. Plenty more with Zinno next. Second full year under new ownership to really be where they are right now for this Commanders franchise is one of the best stories of this NFL season.
Went to the playoffs and won 2 road games. Now we're going to use that. Hey, rookie quarterback on? No more rookie quarterback. He's already arrived in the NFL as a legitimate quarterback. And can you say, Ben, is he already top 5?
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
He did nothing for 5 weeks. So he's becoming his brother. So I don't want to hear about how great TJ Watt is with his 0 playoff wins. And he's the first guy to admit it. He comes right out and says, I've never won a playoff game. I don't matter. All right, at least we all know who the best player on the team is. It's George Pickens. If you don't believe that, well, then screw you too.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Real momentum on Deion Sanders becoming the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
I heard that this morning.
And Dallas is interested in the idea. Deion is interested in the idea, and there is equal interest in moving up to get Shedeur Sanders to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys under Deion.
Be a hell of a reality show.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We all know MVPs don't win the Super Bowl. It's not about MVPs, man. The only MVP, fine. Win the MVP in the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about the MVP in the regular season besides people that bet on it, the actual player themselves, and their agent that's getting a cut of the bonus money. Other than that, who cares? What do you care who wins the MVP? Like I said, unless you bet on it. Right? If you bet on it, fine. Then I guess you care.
Sports Rage tonight. Only on SportsGrid.
As one college football season comes to a close, another not all that far away. College football is always a blend of the historic tradition, the present of what we are seeing, and always an eye on the future. So let's talk 2025 in CFB. Still more than 200 days away from week 0 over in Dublin, Ireland, in Farmageddon, between Iowa State and Kansas State. I am already fired up, and those national championship odds are already out. Ohio State, who won a title this season, booked as the preseason favorite entering next year at 5-1. Zinno, let's start there. I don't actually think that's correct. Ohio State will always reload. They do not rebuild. But a lot of the guys that were the staples of a team that won a national championship this year all came back for one more run. And all of those guys are going to go to the NFL. Ohio State's probably going to have double-digit guys drafted in 2025. So, Zinno, how do you examine the top of the odds board to win a national championship entering next season?
I mean, again, it's really tough to figure out when you look at it. I mean, the idea that you're getting Georgia at 7-1 and Alabama at 18-1 almost, seems foreign to the concept of what we've seen anything over the last decade. But again, you have to believe when you look at the SEC from a quarterback standpoint, is it fair to say Texas has the best one in the conference at this point? Feels that way. I mean, with all the expectations for Arch Manning, it's like, I don't doubt the fact that he would live up to it. Oregon is in an interesting, spot here because who's going to play quarterback for them again? Where are they going? I mean, I know they grabbed what's his face from UCLA, Dante Jones, right?
Dante
the young
Moore.
kid, Dante Moore. Thank you. It was 5 letters, Jones, Moore, same difference. Potato with Tom.
Dante, so.
Yeah, exactly. So, is he going to live up to the hype that he had when he came into UCLA a couple of years ago? Don't know the answer to that. So there's a lot of, fluctuating things that are going on here and, transfer portal and everything else continuing to shake things up. I would probably look at some other long shots within the ACC or even the Big 12 at this point in time to look and make a little noise similar to what Arizona State did this year and be able to make a run. I mean, from a betting perspective, that's the one thing that opens the aperture up when it comes to looking at futures, because now you got 12 teams with a chance to get in and 12 teams with a chance to. So some of these longer odds teams, I mean, does Carson Beck reload at Miami? Does that make them equally as good this year? I don't know the answer to that yet, but it's one of those things where is it worth a look when you're starting to get some longer odds here? Garrett Nussmeier back at LSU at 20-1. Doesn't feel like it's all that crazy that LSU could rise from the ashes a little bit, be a lot more competitive this year if you trust Brian Kelly. So I think with the 12-team playoff, it certainly gives you a bigger reason to start looking at odds differently.
Yeah, it's a good point that you bring up because it used to be you want to thread the needle like, oh, one loss. Well, what about when Alabama has these 3 tough road games in the SEC? Now they can afford to lose 2 of those and still get in. So it keeps your tickets open for longer, which is fantastic. But I do want to focus on the Heisman Trophy odds for next year because I look at this and say to myself, usually the stars right off the bat. And when I see Garrett Nussmeier at an 8-1 price as the favorite right now, Garrett Nussmeier, I said, what are we playing jokes here? We just watched Drew Aller. It was like, hey, maybe it could be a top 5 quarterback turn into a pumpkin right in front of our eyes. Like, yeah, he's top 5 for the Heisman race. Give me some rays of sunshine with this Heisman race here, Mark. Where are we going with this crew?
I mean, look, I think Nico in Tennessee has the probably highest ceiling and the highest potential as a dual threat kind of quarterback. I know, I get it. But another year, right? Another year in the system, another year to sort of grow and elevate. I think that when I look at the skill set of other guys who have won it over the years, it's usually dual threat guys that are literally rushing to the top of the list to end up being the Heisman guy who does it. So I would look in those directions first, guys who can run and throw as guys that I would look at. I mean, does Cade Klubnik sort of scratch the itch a little bit? Maybe. I think Clemson probably maybe under the radar a little bit after what looked like a disappointing year despite getting into the college football playoff. They may be by far and away the best team in the ACC. And if you're winning games and you're going undefeated, you're going to get a lot of extra attention. And Klubnik could be the guy to do that as well. So, look, but if Arch Manning has Texas inside the top 5 for a better part of the year and they don't lose more than one game, his numbers are going to back that up, and he should have a very explosive year.
It was interesting to see these odds open up on Monday evening and see Garrett Nussmeier in front of Arch Manning because of all that Arch has heading his way in Austin. The aura and the performances and the glimpses that we saw this season to kind of back up what we can expect for the Longhorns. If you're asking me to pick somebody right now who I would bet on to either win a Heisman Trophy or contend for a national championship, I do believe Texas is probably the most appealing, not just Arch Manning, but all they return on the defensive side of the football as well. Colin Simmons, Michael Taft, all back for that Texas defense that was elite this year. Carson Beck entered 2024 at Georgia as the Heisman Trophy favorite. He will enter 2025 at Miami, still with one of the 10 best prices at 20-1. I'm not sold just yet. Julian saying he's probably going to be the new quarterback for Ohio State at 18-1 price. Lenora Sellers of South Carolina. Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver, a 12-1 numbers. I like what you said about Cade Klubnik, by the way. When you really peer into the numbers for Clemson this year, it was an atrocious defense, one of the worst we had seen under Dabo Swinney in Clemson, South Carolina, that held the Tigers back. And it was a stagnant offense the previous 3 seasons that in year number 2 with Garrett Riley calling the plays was on the up and up. And Cade Klubnik, a big reason why. I like the way that you assess some of those value pieces and prices entering 2025. Man, can't come soon enough. Already excited.
Rare compliment from Ben Stevens to me. That was warmed my heart.
Yeah. Rare compliment.
You know?
Very highly of what.
No better compliment.
Very highly of your work.
I know you do. You see, can't even say it with a straight face. Can't even say it with a straight face.
I'm laughing at Donnie. You didn't even notice what he did. Once again.
Yeah.
I would say slightly offensive. Conference Championship Sunday in the NFL with Zinno next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's Championship Sunday. Can rookie sensation Jaden Daniels clip the Eagles' wings on his way to Super Bowl history? Then, 2 teams that know each other all too well face off in the AFC in the Bills and Chiefs. SportsGrid has you covered all day Sunday. Start at 8 a.m. with FST, followed by Pro Football Today, and stay with us for in-game live game day. Only on SportsGrid.
Let's get you ready for Conference Championship Weekend in the National Football League as we win with Zin. Mark Zinno here for a 3rd consecutive segment. Now to preview Conference Title Sunday around the NFL. Zinno, we go in reverse order. We start with the AFC Championship game inside Arrowhead. 2 very familiar foes in the postseason. For the 4th time in the last 5 years, it's the Chiefs and the Bills meeting in the playoffs for the 2nd time in that 5-year window in an AFC Championship game in Arrowhead. and you see 34 cents of difference, Mark, in terms of that money line price. Total stands at 47.5. Just how competitive do you expect Sunday night's game in the AFC Championship to actually be?
The Bills are winning this game. I don't need to say it anymore. The Bills are winning this game. There's not a doubt in my mind. I mean, listen, I'll be chalky as hell, and I'll still tease the Bills, and I'll tease them with the Eagles down to a pick 'em. Fine. I don't care. The Bills are winning this game. Take them on the money line. Take the 1.5. The Bills are winning this game. There is just not. Here is the very simple formula for Buffalo. Okay? Challenge this passing offense of the Chiefs to go ahead and beat you. That's it. I mean, if you look at the matchup earlier between these two teams, the Bills held the Kansas City Chiefs under 100 rushing yards and barely 200 passing yards. And here's the thing, and I kept saying this all week long, and I've said this all season long, that Josh Allen has to overcome two things in every single game. The team that he's playing and his head coach, because Sean McDermott is the liability here. But I would tell Sean McDermott, never pass up an opportunity at points in this game. Because in reality, guess what? If you get to 24, you know what the Chiefs can't do? Score more than that. They've told you that all season long. Not without help. If you don't beat yourself and you get to 24, the Chiefs cannot win this game because they can't score more than that. That's the reality of this Chiefs offense at this point in time. So Buffalo's winning this game. They will finally slay the dragon, and they will be heading to New Orleans in the Super Bowl.
I will be a Buffalo fan this weekend in this football game. I just don't know if I can bring myself to bet the Buffalo Bills. Hey, Bills getting 6.5, 7.5. We're all in there. Chiefs just to win the game. That's the tough part. And also at the FanDuel Sportsbook, you click that little tab that says statistics. 60% of the spread bets coming in right now on the Buffalo Bills. Let's turn our attention to Philadelphia, where 70% of the tickets are going in on the Washington Commanders. That line opened up at 4.5 at FanDuel. We now see 6.5 at FanDuel in Philadelphia. And by the way, the thing that I do like too, Mark, we're not worried about weather conditions in either city. How are we feeling about this Commanders-Eagles game on Sunday?
This brings us to the weekly part of our segment where something comes out of my mouth and Ben Stevens' eyes rolls back, his head tilts, and he looks quizzically at the camera because I'm
already done that, by the way.
I know we already did when I said they wouldn't have gotten there with a path. But here we go for take two. I'm going to say something that's going to bother many people. The Washington Commanders didn't win last week. The Detroit Lions lost. Okay? That's what this.
Come on. I like this. I like the start here.
The Commanders did not win. The Lions gave the game away with 5 turnovers. And notably, the game turned on one play. The sack fumble, instead of it being 14-3, they were down 10-7, and they were chasing the rest of the way. I say that to say they're not in the same category as this Eagles team. I've seen the Commanders step up in class all year long, and I've seen them come up short. The only reason the Commanders beat the Eagles earlier this year in Washington was because Jalen Hurts went out of the game in the first quarter with a concussion, and some guy who was imitating the position of quarterback named Kenny Pickett played the rest of that game. So that's not happening here. Washington will not have an answer for Saquon Barkley. I would lay the 6.5 with Philadelphia. They're not walking into the Lincoln Financial and being competitive in this game. Dan Quinn's done a hell of a job, and Jane Daniels is a heck of a quarterback. But let's be real about what this is. There's a reason why only 1 or 2 rookies have ever made it to a conference championship game and never made it to a Super Bowl, because you can't run into luck that many times in a row. As long as Philadelphia doesn't beat themselves, they should win this thing handily.
So it sounds like to me that Mark Zinno's Super Bowl prediction in New Orleans is the Eagles and the Bills. So, Zinno, as we enter Conference Championship Sunday, looking at where those Super Bowl 59 odds are right now, who would you like to wager on?
Well, again, I mean, my heart is with Buffalo, and so will my money also be there. Look, I hope Washington does upset Philadelphia, so Buffalo has an easier chance at winning a title. Like that, I actually do hope happens, but it's not going to. So, look, I mean, I've backed the Bills all year long. I'm not walking off of them now. My absolute nightmare is the Eagles-Chiefs Super Bowl. If I have to watch that again, there would be blood splatter of my own somewhere along the line, because I would have to root for Philadelphia harder than I've ever rooted in my life.
Beautiful.
And I'm not doing that again. So let's go,
Mark,
Buffalo.
you have time to appear tomorrow on a Football Friday. With that breakdown, I think we might need you for a couple segments more just to get ready for the game Sunday. I think so. I think I'm going to book you tomorrow myself. I like this. We'll be right back. I think we'll be back. Yeah, we'll be back.